We talked about Seneca Falls Convention. This is the result of these women are organizing for the rights for women to vote, right? Zen was talking about all the things that women were persecuted on. One thing you guys didn't mention was what happened to all the property of women when they married a man?
I had that written down.
It became the property of the man. Women couldn't vote. And all of these things that you guys discussed, that Zen pointed out, are things that Seneca Falls is going to try to address specifically with the right to vote. That having political equality would solve some of these problems. And it's at Seneca Falls in 1848 in New York where the Declaration of Sentiments is signed and they pronounce that they want the right to vote. This is the first generation of these women. Okay, so in all the social issues we talked about temperance, which we talked about women's rights stuff, right? Moving towards women's right to vote, which we talked about. Now let's talk about education, okay? Slavery, the abolition of slavery, we're going to have literally like 3 whole days on, so we'll do that last, okay? And we are going to have an essay about the effects of the Second Great Awakening. And if you can't get an A on this one, then you're not trying, okay? The amount of evidence that you will have on this could choke a moose, all right? There's so much stuff you can have. The problem will end up being organizing it, because you're going to have so much evidence, you're going to go, who's this voice? Oh, that was funnier than you guys. All right, education. Women start pushing for education for everybody, right? Not just women, but these social reformers of the Second Great Awakening. Tax-supported education. Who pays for your school?
We do.
Taxes do. Your parents do. Other people's parents and non-parents and everyone, right? Taxes go for it.
Even West pays for our schools. She doesn't want kids, so she's still
Okay.
Okay, got it now. Yes. Yes. So West taxes will go to pay for other kids' schools, right? So right now your parents' taxes are paying for your schools, but eventually their taxes will pay for not their kids' school, right? That's just how it is. That society has been convinced that educating children is good for society. And having tax-supported education does this. Now, different parts of the country do a better job than other parts. What part of the country do you think was the last part to actually get tax-supported education?
The South.
Surprisingly, it was the South.
No.
What part do you think was the first part to get tax-supported education?
Northeast.
The Northeast, right? There are public schools in the North that are really, really old. Boston Latin in Boston, I'm not sure how old it is, but I bet it's 150, 160 years old. Laswell, if you want to go get on Google on my computer and type in Boston Latin and see when this thing was founded. Some of these...
This one or that one?
That would be fine. Just, minimize all the bad stuff. Some of these schools have been around a long time, and they perpetuate success. What women start to argue, and specifically someone like Horace Mann, is that the way you transform society is generationally by using education.
What is it?
Boston Latin. It's actually a public school, although it's called Latin. You change society, and Obama, and actually Republicans and Democrats agree with this, that in the long run, education is the key to transforming society and to bringing people up through the
It
classes.
was founded in 1635.
1635, that's a pretty old public school.
Wow.
So,
That's all. 1635? Man, that's old. Actually, it silences me. I had no idea it was that old. Another reformer was Noah Webster. Why do we know Noah Webster?
Because he wrote the dictionary.
He wrote the dictionary. Webster's dictionary becomes important because it standardizes English language. Have you read stuff in the past, like older, like 18th century, 19th century stuff, where, the spelling, even really smart people's spelling is kind of all over the place. E's are randomly added here and there, right? F's for P's and things like that. Webster's dictionary standardizes the English language to the point now where when we say, oh, it's in Webster's, it's like, oh, well, it's in Webster's, I guess that's right. Right? This is going to be important, as is McGuffey next. Yeah. How many of you guys, when you were young, you read these books to teach you to read? Like Jose likes to eat a sandwich, and they'll show a picture of Jose eating a sandwich, right? Mary likes to eat a donut, and Mary's big and fat, right? Mary is going to develop congenital heart failure, right? And you'll see her in a bed, right? Mary dies a slow death, right? Jose is active and fun. They don't say that. But
I don't think they
That's a good
I don't think they start off with Jose either, because that's kind of a...
when I was in high school, or not high school, when I was in elementary school, all my books had Jose. Now I will say this: I went to a school that was 75% minority, so your little Honkyville, everyone's like, Jill and Amber and
Bob.
right. Austin is a white kid's name, right? Don't laugh, Cassidy. So, the McGuffey readers, 122 million copies were printed. These were little copies of books that helped kids to read. And they tended to focus, instead of making fun of obese eating habits, it actually made fun of, didn't make fun, I'm sorry. It actually stressed patriotism, hard work, moral values. Reagan is successful because she works hard. Hallie is poor because she is lazy. Things like that.
That's how society should be today.
Michaela smells bad because she doesn't have an education. Amber smells like roses because she has her doctorate. Oberlin College is also, does anyone know anything about Oberlin College?
It's in the Northeast.
That weren't they like one of the first to allow women? Or
The first. In 1837, Oberlin College, which is in Ohio actually,
That's rather northeastern.
it's northeast of you, yes. So is West Virginia.
Well, nothing's northeast of like Maine.
Sure it is, Canada. But in Ohio, it's actually not only the first to accept women, it's actually the first to accept African Americans. Today, it's still it's a university kind of like Transy or Center or Wittenberg. It's a very, very good liberal arts school. It's very liberal. One of our professors went there. I had a girlfriend in high school that went to Guilford College in North Carolina, and it is absurdly liberal. It's a Quaker college. It's really liberal. Like me and my friend Garland, I was talking about yesterday, we went and road trip down there and some other colleges, we had friends, and I was uncomfortable. It was so liberal. People were
Say back when
very
you have friends.
open. Do what?
Yeah,
Say back when you have friends.
You go, I used to have friends.
Those were the good old days.
I said when I had friends.
I said when we had friends at universities in North Carolina. He had
That
friends at
was-
Davidson. I had friends at
That was
Guilford.
not said.
All right, so I'm sure. Right, back when I had friends,
That's what she assumed.
it was a better time. It was the best of times, and it was the worst of times. Right, not the kids. No, I'm talking
You better
about.
not go to that college.
No.
Guilford it was very, very open, and people were very open with each other, and everything was very free, and I was uncomfortable. I'm like liberal up here, but when it comes to like living habits, I'm very, very conservative. I'm like Rush Limbaugh conservative, but they were like, whatever happens, happens, It's just, people are shacking up all over the place, and everyone's parties were crazy, and I was like, what you're wearing is, tuck that in, right? I was not comfortable. But Oberlin College is really cool because it allowed African Americans and women to have access to higher education. And this is the first step in minority groups moving up, right? Education today, do minorities have the same opportunity education as average white people?
Sometimes you have better opportunities.
So you're saying your average black kid has better opportunity?
Yeah, I would say so because like
Sorry.
they have colleges in order to get certain government funding, don't they have to have like
No. The
pretty
opportunity is the same. It's just some things, such as scholarships
Yeah, those types of
for
things.
minorities as
No,
opposed to
the opportunity's the
opportunities.
same.
It's still the same.
They have worse.
Well, let me ask you a question. Yes, there are opportunities. Why are there opportunities for minorities where you might not get a whites-only scholarship?
Encourage diversity.
maybe to encourage diversity, but let me ask you this, and here's an example. And
People don't get mad.
if you were to go into certain parts of big cities, like New Orleans, for example, public schools in D.C., in New Orleans, in Memphis, in Atlanta are failing public schools. What, on average, is the racial makeup of those schools? It's almost entirely African American. Not 100%, but in cities, it's almost entirely African American. White kids go to private schools, right? Middle class white kids go to private schools in southern cities, and a lot of northern cities. And so what ends up happening is you have public schools, and if they're not, and so you have, and what do middle class black people do, and upper class black people do? They send their kids to private schools too. So what ends up happening in bigger cities is here, everybody goes to Anderson County, right? Very few kids go to Sayre or Catholic from here, right? But there are plenty of middle class people at this school. But it's much fewer in public schools in big cities. Does this make sense? So what ends up happening is the opportunities actually are harder. So here's an example of maybe why scholarships are and why the government does this. Let's say there's two different schools, all right? Let's say there's, we'll use Lexcath and we'll use a school in Compton, all right? Compton and Lexcath. And we'll take race out of it, okay? Lexcath, the average ACT is very high, right? Almost everybody goes to college, right? And let's say here's your ACT and here's your GPA, okay? And let's say your ACT here is a 34 and your GPA is a 4.2. That's a baller, right? Now let's say here you're a 32 and your GPA is a 4.1. Can you make the argument that this Compton person is just as impressive as this Lexington County person? This person, on that, and we'll take race out of it, but in a poor public school that has very few resources, achieving these scores is difficult. Now these scores are also difficult. But if this person is poor, this person has had to overcome a lot more to achieve this than somebody who can afford to go to private school. On average, right? I mean, obviously there are exceptions. Does this make sense? Mm-hmm. This is one reason why there are minority scholarships. Because if we were just to go based on numbers, which kid gets into the best schools? This kid does. But does that mean that this kid is not going to be successful at that school? No. Do you see what I'm saying now? So does everyone have the same legal opportunities? Yes. In reality, does everyone have the same opportunity? Do you have the same opportunity as kids that go to Sayre School? It's 20 grand a year to go to Sayre. Most of the parents are ultra wealthy. Do you think you have the same access to stuff that they do? Because you don't. Right? Now, you guys are at a decent school. Imagine if you go to school in one of these eastern, like at Iroquois, right? Or Iroquois' average ACT last year was 13.9. Poorest kids go there. Kids who can't get anywhere else go there. Teachers don't want to teach there because it's poor kids who don't want to be there. Right? Gangs are there. You're telling me that the kids that go there have the same opportunities that you guys do? That's why we have scholarships. Does that make sense? I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, but that's why we do it, right? And so the education thing still we're working on, right? How do you fix that problem? That's a hard thing. Okay? Okay, and now lyceums. What's the number on that, Howard?
1352.
Okay, so